For decades, the phrase conspiracy theory was a weapon, a way to dismiss anyone who questioned the official narrative. But history has a funny way of leaking. Deep within the vaults of the CIA, the FBI, and the Department of Defense, documents were once filed away that would make the most paranoid theorists blush. These weren't fantasies. They were memos, signed by generals, directives, approved by directors, and operations, funded by taxpayers. Today, we are opening the folders that were never meant to see the light of day. From staged terror attacks to the infiltration of our own government offices, we are looking at the moments when the impossible became the declassified. But what else is still hidden in the shadows? It was 1962, and the Cold War was at a boiling point. The American military leadership wanted a war with Cuba, and they wanted it badly. But they had a problem. The public wasn't interested. So, the Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed a solution known as Operation Northwoods. The plan was as detailed as it was terrifying. It suggested staging acts of terrorism in American cities, sinking boats of Cuban refugees, and even blowing up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay. They even considered faking a plane crash by swapping a civilian airliner with a drone, using a carefully timed explosion to make it look like a tragedy caused by Cuban agents. The goal was simple: blame Fidel Castro and spark a patriotic frenzy for war. General Lyman Lemnitzer signed off on the document, presenting it as a viable military strategy. It was a blueprint for state-sponsored deception at the highest level. However, President John F. Kennedy rejected the proposal, and the documents were buried in the archives for nearly 40 years. But the question remains, how far would the military have gone if they hadn't been stopped by a skeptical president? August 1964. The dark, choppy waters off the coast of North Vietnam. The USS Maddox reported being under fire by North Vietnamese torpedo boats. 2 days later, a second attack was reported. President Lyndon Johnson used these events to secure the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, the legal blank check that effectively started the Vietnam War. Thousands of lives were changed forever based on those late-night reports. But was the second attack even real? Decades later, declassified NSA documents revealed a startling truth. The second attack never happened. The sonar signals were actually the sound of the ship's own propellers and atmospheric interference. The military leadership knew the evidence was thin, even non-existent, but they pushed the narrative to Congress anyway. It was a pivotal moment in global history, built entirely on a ghost. The 2005 release of these documents proved that the data was cherry-picked to support a pre-existing desire for escalation. But was it a genuine mistake by nervous sailors, or a convenient lie used to justify a war that had already been decided in the halls of Washington? While the government looked abroad, it was also looking inward. Under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI launched a secret program called COINTELPRO. Its mission wasn't to solve crimes. It was to neutralize political dissidents. The targets weren't foreign spies. They were American citizens. Civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were subjected to relentless surveillance, wiretapping, and even anonymous letters meant to induce psychological breakdowns. The FBI infiltrated legal organizations, spread false rumors to destroy marriages, and intentionally incited violence between rival activist groups. They were obsessed with preventing the rise of what Hoover called a Black Messiah. For 15 years, this shadow war was waged in secret, completely hidden from the eyes of Congress or the courts. It only came to light because a group of activists broke into an FBI office in 1971 and stole the files. Without that burglary, the program might have continued indefinitely. But how does a democracy protect itself when its own protectors become the predators of civil liberties? Most people think of government secrets as things the government keeps from us. But in the 1970s, a secret was being kept inside the government by an outside group. This was Operation Snow White. It remains one of the largest infiltrations of the United States government in history, and it wasn't carried out by the Soviet Union. It was the Church of Scientology. Thousands of members were mobilized to bug government offices and steal classified documents regarding the organization and its founder, L. Ron Hubbard. They successfully infiltrated 136 government agencies, including the Department of Justice and the IRS, by placing members in clerical and secretarial positions. They were literally walking out of federal buildings with suitcases full of stolen files every single day. When the FBI finally raided their offices in 1977, they found mountains of stolen documents and sophisticated surveillance gear. It was a massive wake-up call that the corridors of power were far more vulnerable than anyone realized. But if a private organization could pull this off so successfully, how many other groups have tried to pull the strings from the inside? During the height of the Cold War, the CIA became obsessed with a terrifying possibility: the ability to control the human mind. Operation MKUltra was the result. Led by chemist Sidney Gottlieb, the agency conducted hundreds of experiments on unwitting human subjects, including prisoners, hospital patients, and even random people at bars in San Francisco. They used LSD, sensory deprivation, and hypnosis to see if they could break the human mind and rebuild it as a weapon for the intelligence community. These weren't just theories. They were real sessions in safe houses and secret labs funded by black budgets. Many victims suffered permanent psychological damage, and some even lost their lives in the pursuit of these non-traditional interrogation techniques. Most of the official records were destroyed in 1973 by order of the CIA director to avoid public scandal, but enough testimony and paperwork survived to tell a story of total ethical collapse. It was a dark chapter where the pursuit of security led directly to the abandonment of basic human rights. But what happens to the soul of a nation when its secrets are written in the suffering of its own people? The program showed that in the race for dominance, the government was willing to treat its own citizens as lab rats. By 1975, the dam finally broke. Following the Watergate scandal and reports of domestic spying, the United States Senate formed the Church Committee, led by Senator Frank Church. For the first time, the secret world of intelligence was dragged into the bright light of public hearings. The committee uncovered the horrors of MKUltra, the illegal abuses of COINTELPRO, and even assassination plots against foreign leaders that had been kept from the public for decades. It was a moment of profound national reckoning. The result was a complete overhaul of how intelligence agencies were allowed to operate. We saw the creation of the FISA court and the establishment of permanent oversight committees in both the House and the Senate. It was an attempt to ensure that the invisible government would never again act without accountability to the people's representatives. It was the birth of the modern intelligence community as we know it today. But can laws and committees truly restrain those who operate in the shadows? The legacy of the Church Committee is a reminder that without constant pressure, the darkness naturally returns to the halls of power. Darkness naturally returns to the halls of power. Today, we live in an era where skepticism is at an all-time high. The revelations of the past have left a permanent mark on the public psyche. The Freedom of Information Act has become a vital tool for journalists and citizens to peek behind the curtain. But the battle for transparency is never truly over. Every declassified file reminds us that history is often more complex and more calculated than the version we are taught in textbooks. Government secrets are a necessary part of national security, but without oversight, they can easily become a shroud for corruption and abuse. The truth was out there. It was just buried under layers of red tape and top-secret stamps. As we move forward, the lesson remains clear. The price of a functioning democracy is eternal vigilance. We must continue to ask the hard questions and demand the records. Because, as we've seen throughout this journey, the most dangerous secrets are often the ones we are told simply don't exist. Transparency isn't just a policy, it's the only way to ensure that the history of tomorrow isn't written in the shadows of today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the archives of the Declassified. History is rarely a straight line, and it's often stranger than fiction. If you found these revelations as fascinating as we did, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. It helps us continue to dig deep into the hidden layers of our world. What's a declassified secret that surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.